Chapter 1 When Anna Taylor interrupted Grandma Gray's suggestion for me to marry into the General's mansion in her place, I knew that today, I was not the only one who had been reborn. In my previous life, my father, through business connections, received some insider information from the palace. The Thompson General's mansion was about to have its assets confiscated, and the family would be exiled to Chinjo. Anna Taylor, my elder sister, didn't want to marry into that family only to face exile and suffering. She followed Grandma Gray's idea and thought of me, an illegitimate daughter unloved by my father, to marry in her place and bear the punishment. Meanwhile, she would marry the newly appointed scholar who had just passed the imperial examination and been granted a position as a compiler at the Hanlon Academy. Sister, your health has always been poor. The long and arduous journey of exile, how could you endure it? Just pretend you didn't hear what Mother said. I've always cared for you and would, of course, never fight you over your marriage. Anna Taylor's eyes sparkled with a glint of triumphant condescension, her tone dripping with feigned generosity, just like in my previous life when she pushed me to marry in her place. Grandma Gray, standing nearby, was visibly anxious. Anna, that's Chinjo. The Thompson family may never return to the capital. If you marry into that family, you'll be stuck in that barren desert for the rest of your life. Anna Taylor smiled, her face full of confidence. No one knew what she whispered into Grandma Gray's ear. In the end, Grandma Gray agreed not to force me to marry in her place. But she didn't forget to remind me, Lucy, your sister is sacrificing her future to marry into the General's mansion. She's doing this because she's considerate and loves you. Life in Chinjo will be harsh and difficult, so split half of your dowry to add to Anna's, all right? Hearing this, I lowered my head and obediently nodded in agreement. Whether in my previous life or this one, half of my dowry was something I could never keep for myself. In the Taylor household, I was nothing more than an illegitimate daughter born to a concubine, unworthy of mention. My father didn't care for me, and Grandma Gray looked down on me. I grew up like a weed, trampled and oppressed by others. Not being forced to become a concubine for some old man was already the best arrangement I could hope for. It's just uncertain whether this time Anna Taylor, by stepping into the fiery pit of the General's mansion herself, will regret it deeply later on. In her previous life, Anna Taylor only saw the glory that came after marrying into the Jeong family. The Thompson family was cleared of wrongful accusations, received high honors and favor from the new emperor, and her husband promised eternal love, vowing never to take a concubine. But she failed to see the countless hardships I endured during that time. The Taylor family, being merchants by origin, was inherently unworthy of the General's mansion. The marriage between Anna Taylor and General Thompson was only arranged due to an old favor their ancestors owed to the General's mansion. When the Thompson family fell from grace and descended into poverty, I was pushed by the Taylor family to marry in her stead. My dowry was cut down to almost nothing, barely enough to scrape by. My mother-in-law, already displeased with the Taylor family's mercantile background, deemed the daughter of a merchant unworthy. After this, she looked down on me even more, treating me as an unwanted second daughter. During the exile, life was extremely harsh. Often, there wasn't enough food to last from one meal to the next. Passing through famine-stricken areas, I even had to survive on tree bark and grass roots for days just to stay alive. Even so, my mother-in-law never ceased tormenting me. Because of this, I later developed a severe stomach illness. When summoned back to the capital by the new emperor, we were ambushed on the way by assassins sent by a prince who had failed in his bid for the throne. In the chaos, I shielded General James Thompson from a fatal sword strike. Outsiders only know of the loyal and illustrious General James Thompson, who cherishes the wife who endured hardships by his side, vowing never to take a concubine. But no one knows that because of the exile and the fatal sword wound I took for him, my health was irreparably damaged, leaving me unable to bear children. If it weren't for the fact that James Thompson would be criticized by society for abandoning his wife right after returning to the capital, I would have been thrown out long ago. Day after day, I lie on the sickbed in pain, with no one to care for me, while enduring the sight of James Thompson keeping a harem of mistresses outside. I'm even forced to accept and raise his illegitimate child under my name. Such a fiery pit of despair, yet in Anna Taylor's eyes, it is a life of wealth and luxury. She, who has been well protected and pampered for so many years, now finds herself married to a husband who is dirt poor, with no prospects of career advancement. Naturally, she doesn't want to endure such hardship any longer. Now, it's all worked out. Anna Taylor killed me. She has freed me from that fiery pit and is even willing to exchange back the original marriage arrangement with me. Just imagining it, my future life will be so much better. Chapter 2. 7 days later, my elder sister Anna Taylor and I were both married off. Just like in my previous life, Anna Taylor had a grand wedding procession with 10 miles of bright red dowry, lively and jubilant. As for me, I sat quietly in a small red sedan chair and was brought to the humble home of the newly appointed top scholar, Mark Smith. Mark Smith's family was poor, and his parents had passed away. After completing his mourning period, he successfully passed the imperial examination this year. If he hadn't chosen the wrong faction, his future would undoubtedly be bright. After the wedding ceremony, I was helped into the bridal chamber by my dowry maid. Outside, Mark Smith finished entertaining the guests before pushing the door open to enter. Hearing the approaching footsteps, I felt a little flustered beneath the red veil, instinctively clenching my hands. Moments later, the world before me brightened as Mark Smith lifted the red veil. I obediently raised my head to look at him, slightly taken aback. Mark Smith was unexpectedly handsome, with sharp eyebrows, a high nose bridge, and amber eyes that held a hint of surprise, reflecting my dazed expression as I stared at him. Unlike the general of military origin like James Thompson, who is tall, speaks with a rough and blunt tone, Mark Smith possesses a dignified and refined appearance, his gestures full of gentleness. The Taylor family actually went through with marrying you off here. When Mark Smith turned to fetch the ceremonial wine, I caught a soft sigh. Mark Smith, is it true that you don't want to marry me? Nervously, I dug my fingernails into my palms, looking straight at him. But as soon as I spoke, I regretted it. The Taylor family sent someone a few days ago to inform me that the initial arrangement for the second miss to marry me had been changed to the first miss, Anna Taylor. This happened right after rumors spread that the Thompson family would have their assets confiscated and face exile. Such actions from them are truly contemptible. However, since the marriage had already been arranged, there was nothing I could do about it. Mark Smith smiled faintly as he looked at me. Now that I think about it, it's actually better that you didn't end up in the Thompson household. I was stunned, not expecting such a response. Under the flickering candlelight, Mark Smith's eyes sparkled as he placed the ceremonial wine cup into my hands. Looking at me with warmth, his voice carried a soothing charm, "My lady, it's getting late. We should drink the wedding wine now." My face flushed slightly, and I felt the spot where his hand had touched mine grow warm. Lowering my head, I accepted the cup and drank the ceremonial wine with him. 3 days later, it was the day we returned to my family home for the customary visit. In my previous life, the imperial decree for asset confiscation and exile also arrived on this very day. That day, I returned alone for the visit, but before I could finish the meal, the decree arrived. I was escorted back to General Thompson's residence by the imperial guards, and from there, my assets were continuously seized, and I was directly sent into exile to Qinzhou. But now, Anna Taylor is the one returning with me for the customary visit, about to face exile. At the dining table, my father and Grandma Gray wore worried expressions, showing no appetite for the food. "Anna, why must you endure such suffering? What if the news turns out to be false?" Anna Taylor, her face glowing with confidence, reassured them. "Father, Mother, don't worry. I will come out of this unscathed." I coldly watched their anxious display, gripping the chopsticks tightly in my hand. In my previous life, when it was me facing such a predicament, my father and Grandma Gray had hoped I wouldn't return home, so the Taylor family wouldn't share in my misfortune. Let alone now, my father had even made arrangements with the Ministry of Justice officials escorting the exile, asking them to take good care of my sister during the journey. My eyes sparkled as Mark Smith placed a piece of deboned fish on my plate. "My dear wife, have some fish," he said. As I lowered my head to eat, the arrogant voice of Anna Taylor reached my ears. "Sister, are you and Mark Smith doing well?" I smiled, maintaining my composure, and replied sarcastically, "Sister, you're about to be exiled with your husband, yet you still have time to worry about me. How considerate. But on such an important day like returning home to visit, why hasn't your husband shown up?" Anna Taylor's face twisted with anger, while Grandma Gray slammed the table and scolded, "Lucy Taylor, your sister was kind enough not to let you marry in her place, and even took the punishment for you. And now you dare mock Anna? How disrespectful." Before I could respond, Mark Smith's calm yet firm voice interrupted, "Mother-in-law, Lucy was originally the one engaged to this son-in-law. How can it be said that anyone took punishment for her?" This time even Grandma Gray's face contorted with fury. I hadn't expected Mark Smith to defend me. Turning to look at him, I was momentarily stunned, my gaze softening. In my past life, after I returned to the capital, the Taylor family constantly caused trouble for me, summoning me back every other day. My mother-in-law was displeased, fearing I would take items from the general's residence to benefit my natal family, and guarded against me at every turn. James Thompson, my former husband, remained indifferent, never caring or standing up for me. I smiled faintly. Thankfully, those difficult days are behind me. Now, in the Smith household, my life is peaceful. I don't need to serve my in-laws, my husband values me, and I've become the matriarch of the family. Such a life was something I never dared to dream of in the past. Chapter 3. As we were about to finish our meal, an imperial eunuch arrived from the palace, accompanied by the imperial guards. The eunuch read the decree aloud in his sharp, high-pitched voice, "Taylor family, follow the Lord on this journey. Eunuch Duong, Anna has been pampered since childhood and has never suffered hardships. I hope you can take care of her." My father slipped a small package into Eunuch Duong's hands. Eunuch Duong squinted as he accepted the gift, nodding slightly to the imperial guard beside him. Afterward, Anna Taylor straightened her clothes and stepped outside. However, as Anna Taylor passed by me, she suddenly stopped. Lowering her head, she spoke with a tone full of smugness, "Little sister, enjoy the difficult days ahead in the Smith household. Your elder sister won't be around to accompany you anymore. The road to exile is harsh." "Take care, elder sister," I replied, smiling as I watched Anna Taylor's retreating figure. Anna Taylor was truly naive. She had no idea that the hardships awaiting her on the journey to exile alone were enough to make this pampered young lady taste the bitterness of life. After Anna Taylor departed, Mark Smith and I also left the Taylor household and headed toward the general's manor. When we arrived, the place was tightly surrounded by imperial guards, and outside, a crowd of citizens was furiously shouting and cursing at the manor. My gaze shifted to the crowd, where I spotted Anna Taylor. Once so arrogant and proud, she now wore coarse clothing, her neatly styled hair slightly disheveled, bearing no resemblance to the haughty young lady she once was. Someone in the crowd threw a handful of rotten vegetable leaves, which coincidentally landed right on Anna Taylor's head. Watching Anna Taylor curse loudly without restraint, only to be glared at disdainfully by the elderly matron of the Thompson family, I couldn't help but smile, finding the scene rather amusing. Soon, the imperial guards ordered the sale of all the servants in the general's manor, while the female relatives and James Thompson were escorted out of the capital under guard. Mark Smith and I also returned home. On the long road, I quietly tugged at Mark Smith's sleeve. The Thompson family was exiled because of the power struggle between Prince Charles and Prince Edward, wasn't it? Mark Smith, you mustn't take sides or support anyone. You've only recently taken office. If you choose the wrong side, you'll lose everything. Do you understand? Mark Smith suddenly stopped in his tracks, grabbed my hand in surprise, looked around cautiously, and pulled me into a small alley. "Where did you hear about this?" Mark Smith furrowed his brow, his voice lowering and softening. "Don't speak of such things outside, do you understand? The emperor is growing weaker by the day. If someone with ill intentions hears this, such words could bring disaster. I nodded but still clung tightly to Mark Smith's sleeve, insisting, then promise me, you won't take sides in this power struggle. Let's just live our lives peacefully. In my past life, Mark Smith sided with Prince Edward. He had a bright future ahead of him, but after Prince Charles ascended the throne, he was removed from the Imperial Academy and relegated to a minor magistrate position in a district near the capital. Mark Smith gazed at me for a long moment, seeing my unwavering determination. Only then did he slowly nod. After the Thompson family had their assets confiscated and were exiled, everyone in the capital was on edge. The struggle for the throne had entered a tense phase, and rumors spread that His Majesty would soon pass away. Innocent people were continually being dragged into the chaos. Fortunately, Mark Smith listened to my advice and refrained from joining any faction, maintaining a neutral stance. Life in the Smith household has been relatively stable for me. Mark Smith's parents passed away long ago, so I don't have to serve my in-laws. Although his salary isn't high, we have enough to eat and wear. Compared to my life before marriage, things are much better now. Still, I've always been someone who worries about the future. A few days ago, I suddenly remembered something important. In my previous life, during the exile, the Wen River Dam broke, flooding many fertile fields and causing a massive famine. Because of the throne struggle, this disaster was covered up by local officials, but the soaring food prices couldn't be hidden. I distinctly remember the housekeeper in charge of purchases at the general's mansion once lamenting that food prices had risen again. For an entire year, food prices in the capital didn't drop until the following year's harvest improved the situation significantly. I counted the days. The timing of the Wen River fields flooding coincides with these very days. News hasn't reached the capital yet, so there's still a chance to act. I sorted through the dowry I brought with me when I got married and converted everything into cash, about 1,500 taels of silver. Currently, food prices are still normal. In fact, due to a large shipment recently arriving in the capital, prices have even dropped by 2 coins per caddy compared to last month. I disguised myself slightly, put on a hat, and prepared to go out to buy grain. I also planned to rent a house on the outskirts of the city. But just as I was about to leave, I ran into Mark Smith, who had just returned from court. "Dear, what are you doing?" I converted my dowry into cash and planned to buy some grain. Mark Smith's expression turned serious as he pressed me down into a chair. "Are we out of money? Why would you need to use your dowry to make up for it? 10 days until the next salary comes in, and now I interrupted him. "Mark Smith, we still have some money and rice at home." "Mark Smith, I had a dream. Soon, there will be a flood in the Wen River. Many fertile fields will be washed away, food will become scarce, and the price of provisions will rise. Right now, our life is stable, but not abundant. I want to try." As I spoke, my voice softened toward the end, unsure if Mark Smith would agree with my intentions. The Thompson family looked down on daughters of merchants, considering them to lack status. I had brought up the idea of doing business twice with the old madam, but she immediately scolded me, calling me shameless for not focusing on household duties and instead wanting to engage in improper activities. "Is that all?" I thought. Mark Smith lowered his head with a smile, then looked up at me. Our gazes met, and in his narrow eyes, I saw my small reflection. "My dear, do whatever you want to do. There's no need to hide it from me." My face reddened slightly. So, all these days I had been secretly selling my wedding dowry behind Mark Smith's back, and he knew all along. "Don't you think it's disgraceful for me, as a woman, to go out and work?" "Why would I think that? A woman is also a person, no different from a man. Women have their own world, and I have no right to restrain you. Moreover, back when my mother raised me and sent me to school, she had to wash clothes for others. I never thought it was disgraceful for her, and I certainly don't think it's disgraceful for you to want to engage in business." Each word struck a chord deep in my heart. My eyes reddened, and I quickly lowered my head before anything spilled out. After a moment, I asked, Do you not think what I said is absurd? The Wen River Dam hasn't been repaired for years. Recently, while organizing documents, I came across records of officials embezzling repair funds during the last renovation. The Imperial Astronomical Bureau predicts rain in the coming days. If the dam breaks, it wouldn't be surprising. Mark Smith paused briefly, then smiled at me. Besides, I trust your judgment. Whatever my dear says must be right. Chapter 4. Over the course of 2 days, I visited all the rice stores in the city, purchasing a large quantity of rice at 40 coins per dough, and stored it in the rented house on the outskirts. Not long after, as the Imperial Astronomical Bureau had predicted, a 5-day-long downpour began. Within a few days, the price of grain in the capital quietly rose, climbing to 50 coins, with some even selling at 70 coins per dough of rice, and this trend showed no signs of stopping, continuing to rise further. No news of flooding along the Wen River had yet reached the capital. Mark Smith, seeing everything unfold just as I had described in my dream, submitted a memorial to the emperor, requesting that an investigation be sent to the Wen River area. However, the memorial seemed to have been stalled somewhere, with no reply, and the court remained silent on the matter. One day, after returning from an outing, I found Mark Smith sitting dejectedly in the courtyard, his spirits low, a state that persisted for several days. I hesitated for a long time before finally saying, "Mark Smith, whatever you decide to do, I will support you." "My dear wife, what if I can no longer serve as an official?" Suddenly, memories of passing through the Wen River area during my previous life in exile came rushing back to me. Floods destroyed houses, terraced fields, and yet the court remained unresponsive. People wandered everywhere, with a large number of refugees flocking to the capital. The assassination attempt we encountered upon returning to the capital was also orchestrated by those taking advantage of the chaos. I squinted with a smile. "Then I'll take care of you. Right now, the price of rice has risen to 70 or 80 coins per dough. In the future, I'll surely have money. The lives of commoners are still lives. Someone has to step forward. Even if you're targeted, can no longer serve as an official, or your career is cut short in the future, you'll remain special because you've sacrificed for the people. I will never blame you." Mark Smith stared at me intently, suddenly rushing forward to embrace me tightly. "My dear wife, thank you." The next day, the emperor's health had significantly improved, and he personally attended court early in the morning. Mark Smith directly exposed the matter before the court. The emperor was furious. After thoroughly investigating the suppression of the memorials, he publicly punished Prince Edward's subordinates. Following this, he assigned Mark Smith to conduct a detailed investigation in the Wen River region. I saw Mark Smith off at the city gates. Not long after, members of the Taylor family came to visit. My father sipped tea for a long time before slowly speaking. "Lucy, have you been purchasing most of the grain in the capital recently?" My expression shifted slightly but quickly returned to normal. The price of grain had skyrocketed, now reaching 100 coins, and many merchants were scrambling to buy supplies. I wasn't surprised that my identity had been uncovered. After all, merchants only care about profit. "Yes, father." My father set down his teacup and commanded in a stern voice, "Lucy, hand over all the grain you've stockpiled to me." "And how much does father intend to pay for the grain?" Furious, he exclaimed, "Lucy Taylor, I am your father. I'm not negotiating with you. Tell me where the grain is, and I'll send people to collect it shortly. If that's all the sincerity father has to offer, then please, feel free to leave." I remained calm, preparing to call someone to see him out. "Lucy Taylor. You're a woman, what kind of behavior is this, going out and conducting business like this? I'm thinking of your well-being. Shameless. One day, if Mark Smith abandons you, the Taylor family won't take in a disgraceful daughter like you." I let out a cold laugh, once again witnessing the hypocrisy and greed of my father. Using the pretense of caring for me, he was, in truth, only focused on his own interests. Just like in my previous life, the general's residence was highly trusted by the new emperor. My father had asked me several times to seek James Thompson's help in turning the Taylor family into imperial merchants, responsible for annual tributes in the future. He claimed it was for the strength of the family, so they could later support me. But when I suffered hardships in the Jiang family and wanted a divorce, my father fiercely declared, "Even if you die, you must die in the Jiang family. Your elder sister gave up a good marriage for you, and now she suffers daily hardships while you enjoy the wealth and luxury that should have been hers. Don't you dare act ungrateful. If you anger the Jiang family, our entire family will be buried along with you." The sound of shattering brought me back to reality. My father was standing there, furious, with shards of a broken teacup at his feet. I coldly replied, "Then you needn't worry, father. I've already discussed my business matters with my husband, and he has agreed." My father was so enraged he could barely breathe. Raising his hand, he shouted, "You ungrateful child! How could I have raised such a disobedient daughter? I should have married you off to the general's residence from the start. Let them grind down that insolent attitude of yours." "Father, I have other matters to attend to, so I won't keep you for lunch," I said bluntly, effectively dismissing him. Finally, I added, "And father, that grain doesn't belong to you. You'd best not touch it. If this matter reaches the authorities, I can't guarantee there will be any father-daughter bond left between us." Chapter 5. A few days later, I received a letter from Mark Smith sent from the Wen River area, along with news of the flood spreading throughout the capital. The villages in the Wen River area were in dire straits. Not long after, His Majesty dispatched people for relief efforts, helping the displaced settle and rebuild their lives, as well as repairing the river dam. Prince Edward was found guilty of numerous crimes, with some even accusing him of embezzling funds meant for dam repairs in the past. Prince Edward was deposed, demoted to a commoner, and exiled to the frontier, forbidden to return to the capital without permission. The tragic struggle for the throne from my previous life ended so swiftly this time. 7 or 8 days later, His Majesty passed away, and Prince Charles ascended to the throne. His first decree was to summon the general's residence family back from Qinzhou. My father came to see me once again, still because of the grain I had in my possession. "Father, please leave. I've already sold all the grain." Currently, news of the floods had spread across the capital, and the price of grain had risen to 1,000 taels per dough of rice, nearing the peak it had reached in my previous life. Seeing such a lucrative opportunity, my father couldn't bear to let it slip away. "What? Sold?" "Yes, sold. If you want to buy, you can go to the Wang family's grain store in the west of the city." Watching my father's face twist with anger and frustration, I couldn't help but smirk coldly. "Fine, fine, fine. You ungrateful child. Back when your mother gave birth to you, I should have." The smile on my face vanished. "Father, if you regret bringing me into this world, then let's sever all ties from now on. We'll have nothing more to do with each other." My father's face changed continuously, and after a long while, he angrily flung his sleeve. "Fine. From now on, Tabasin has no unfilial child like you." "Humph. Now Anna and General Thompson are about to return. She is the general's wife, far better than you." I smiled and saw him off. Indeed, Anna Taylor is about to return. I have truly been looking forward to this day for a long time. On the day Anna Taylor returned, I went to a tavern on the main street near the city gate and rented a room. After waiting for a long while, there was finally some commotion at the city gate. Unlike the time when their property was confiscated, the streets were now packed with people cheering loudly for the glorious General Thompson. The new emperor had ascended the throne, pardoned them, and even bestowed upon them the title, the Loyal General, who sacrificed himself to save tens of thousands of people in the Wan River region from dire straits. In less than a month, the once disgraced general's residence had transformed into a household of revered heroes, loved by all. This was a scene that had never appeared in my previous life. I stroked my chin, lost in thought, before letting out a few chuckles. As the procession from the general's residence approached the tavern, I spotted Anna Taylor amidst the crowd after days of not seeing her. At this moment, Anna Taylor's hair was disheveled, her face pale, and the oversized coarse cloth dress she wore bore faint bloodstains. She looked as fragile as a sheet of paper, a far cry from the once arrogant young lady she used to be. I smiled. I wonder if Anna Taylor is satisfied with her current life. In the crowd, Anna Taylor seemed to sense something and lifted her head to look in this direction. When she saw me, her gaze was filled with a murderous intensity, as if she wanted to devour me alive. I gently raised my hand, my lips moving slightly. "Sister, welcome back." 2 days later, the loyal general hosted a grand banquet, inviting many officials from the capital to attend. I was also invited. As if afraid I wouldn't show up, Anna Taylor personally came to deliver the invitation to me. "Sister, you must come tomorrow." Anna Taylor adjusted the golden earring on her ear, then removed the hood of her cloak, revealing a golden hairpin in front of me. In just 2 days, Anna Taylor had transformed from a disheveled and shabby woman into someone dressed in splendid attire. I pretended not to notice and quietly accepted the invitation. "Oh, sister, life in the Smith household hasn't been good, has it? This outfit seems to be something you brought from your maternal home, and the jewelry, it's quite outdated, isn't it?" Anna Taylor's face was full of smugness, the corners of her mouth curling up. "Mark Smith treats you like this, and I truly feel sorry for you." I curled my lips into a faint smile and suddenly grabbed her hand, exposing the unhealed wound on her wrist. Then, as if unintentionally, I remarked, "This wound is so severe, it will surely leave a scar. Sister must have endured a lot of hardships. It's only been a month since we last met, and you've lost so much weight. I truly feel sorry for you." Anna Taylor's face turned red with anger, her eyes wide open as she yanked her hand back. But she pulled too hard and almost fell to the ground. The maid beside her turned pale, with fright, quickly supporting Anna Taylor. "Madam, you've just had a miscarriage, your body is weak, you shouldn't be outside. Let's return quickly, or the old madam will scold you again." A miscarriage? I didn't expect Anna Taylor to have miscarried during her exile. Thinking back to the events of my previous life, during this period, Anna Taylor must have suffered 100 times more than I did in the past. In my previous life, I couldn't have children. Now, in such harsh conditions, Anna Taylor miscarrying must be. My eyes briefly flickered, but my expression remained unchanged. "Sister endured so much on the road to exile, and you were even pregnant. How pitiful. After the miscarriage, you still came personally to deliver the invitation. I'm truly honored. I'll make sure to attend the banquet on time tomorrow." Anna Taylor glared at me fiercely, before turning around and leaving. Chapter 6. The next day, I arrived at the banquet on time. The loyal and righteous general is currently highly regarded by the new emperor, and many people attended the event. Once everyone had taken their seats, James Thompson appeared before the crowd, holding Anna Taylor in his arms. Just like in my previous life, James Thompson introduced Anna Taylor's status. During the exile, my wife shielded me from an arrow, and because of that, we lost our first child. I declare here today, and ask everyone to bear witness, that I will treat Anna well for the rest of my life. For one lifetime, there will only be Anna. The crowd buzzed with excitement. As in my past life, everyone showed admiration and respect. Around me, I could hear the envious sighs of many ladies. After the banquet, a crowd gathered around Anna Taylor, disregarding her merchant background entirely. "Sister, come over here. What are you standing there for?" Anna Taylor, surrounded by the ladies of several prominent families, suddenly waved at me as I stood in a corner. As I approached, Anna Taylor feigned intimacy by holding my hand. Someone asked about my identity, and Anna Taylor smirked as she replied, "Her? Oh, she's my younger half-sister. Just a few days ago, we both got married. She married into the Smith family, yes, to Mark Smith, the top scholar." The disdain Anna Taylor had been expecting did not appear on anyone's face. A round-faced lady covered her mouth and said, "Smith? Oh, I've heard of him. If it weren't for him, the people living by the Wind River would still be suffering. I think Smith has a bright future ahead of him. When he returns from the Wind River, he'll likely receive a significant reward. Truly admirable, both of you sisters have found such ideal husbands. I smiled faintly, responding calmly to the compliments and goodwill of the ladies. Beside me, Anna Taylor, who had been basking in her pride moments ago, now looked visibly displeased. After the crowd dispersed, Anna Taylor stormed up to me. How is this possible? Why is Mark Smith at the Wind River? Wasn't he demoted? This can't be. Sister, some things are achieved through effort, I replied. Anna Taylor's pupils dilated in shock. After a long pause, she gritted her teeth and said, "So, you've been reborn too?" I said nothing, only offering a faint smile. Seeing my expression, Anna Taylor dropped her pretense of deep sisterly affection in front of me entirely. Wretched woman, James Thompson is mine now, along with all the glory and wealth. Don't even think about taking them away. So what if you changed Mark Smith's fate? You'll never surpass me in this lifetime. I am the general's wife now. I tilted my head, my gaze filled with pity. Sister, if I could change Mark Smith's fate, why do you think I didn't marry James Thompson this time? If I truly wanted to seize this engagement, I wouldn't have obediently accepted all the arrangements back then. What do you mean by that? You'll find out soon enough, sister. The days ahead are still long for you. I added one more remark. Oh, by the way, sister, I suppose the road to exile will be similar to what I experienced in the past, won't it? Eating tree bark and grass roots, only to end up struck by an arrow and miscarrying. Take good care of yourself. Seeing Anna Taylor's unease, I finally left, satisfied. A few days later, Anna Taylor, pale-faced, came looking for me. This time, she came alone, without her maid. Lucy Taylor. You knew all along, didn't you? I wiped my mouth and calmly replied, Sister, what are you talking about? I secretly went to see the doctor. Now my body is weak, and I can no longer have children. You knew this beforehand, didn't you? Why didn't you tell me? I laughed. Sister, wasn't this marriage your own choice? Isn't this the wealth and glory you've always dreamed of? Then that child who suddenly appeared back then, wasn't he born by you? At the mention of the child, my face turned cold. How could that child have been born by me? I was confined in the Thompson household under strict surveillance by James Thompson and the old madam, unable to leave for 10 whole months. Later, I learned that outside, he already had a concubine who was pregnant and about to give birth. He knew I couldn't bear children, but he couldn't write me a divorce letter to cast me aside. So, he resorted to trickery, announcing to the public that the baby boy was born by me, just to secure the child's status as the legitimate heir. To this day, I still vividly remember James Thompson's face at that time. Lucy Taylor, you can no longer bear children. If it weren't for the fact that you once shielded me from a sword strike, I would have discarded you long ago. Now, this child will be raised under your name. If you agree to raise my legitimate heir, you'll remain the mistress of the general's residence. If not, leave. Why didn't you tell me? You wretched woman. Anna Taylor raised her hand to strike me, but with her current frail state, she couldn't even touch me. I grabbed her slender wrist and pushed her back several steps. Sister, you never asked. But isn't this good for you? Someone else bore a child for you, the child was brought under your name, and you peacefully sit as the general's wife. Isn't this exactly what you've always wanted? Anna Taylor glared at me with eyes full of hatred, as if she wanted to devour me alive. Suddenly, she froze, said nothing, and staggered out. Chapter 7. A few days later, while passing by the Jiang family's house, I noticed a small sedan chair being carried to the side door. Upon inquiry, I learned that something major had happened to the Thompson family. 2 days ago, when James Thompson visited his pregnant concubine, he was caught by Anna Taylor. Anna Taylor caused a huge commotion, and now the entire capital knows that James Thompson is a hypocrite. He had promised Anna Taylor a lifelong commitment to only her, but behind her back, his concubine was already pregnant. The Thompson family had no choice but to bring the concubine into the household. I chuckled, wondering if Anna Taylor regretted digging her own grave. Just as I was about to leave, I saw a figure rush out from the side door. "You shameless wench! Get out!" The pregnant concubine, who had just been helped out of the small sedan chair, was shoved back 2 steps by Anna Taylor. The maid screamed in shock and hurriedly pulled the people apart, creating a chaotic scene. "Anna Taylor! What do you think you're doing?" Amid the scuffle, the sound of horse hooves echoed. James Thompson dismounted from his horse, kicked away the hysterical Anna Taylor, and embraced the crying concubine. "James Thompson, you promised me a lifetime of loyalty, just the 2 of us. And now, what are you doing? Are you really going to bring this shameless woman into the household? I won't allow it. Don't forget, if it weren't for me blocking that sword for you, you would already be dead. If you bring this vile woman into the residence, you might as well abandon me. In this household, if I am here, she cannot be, if she is here, I cannot stay. You don't have a choice in the matter. Everything has already come to this point, and it's fortunate I'm not abandoning you. Fan must enter the residence. Guards, escort the madam back to her quarters and take good care of her. Under no circumstances should she leave and embarrass the general's household again." James Thompson coldly summoned the household staff and dragged Anna Taylor back. The butler quickly dispersed the crowd, saying, "Move along, move along. The madam is currently suffering from delusions. Let's not make this a bigger spectacle." I left with a sense of regret, only to feel that Anna Taylor deserved this. This was the fate she had earned. 2 days later, I continued observing the situation at the Thompson household. Grandma Gray visited the Thompson residence twice to see Anna Taylor. I understood Anna Taylor well. There was no way she would accept James Thompson marrying a concubine. Now that she could no longer bear children herself, how could she allow a concubine to rise above her? She would undoubtedly stir up trouble and demand a divorce. Thinking back to my previous life, when my father told me to die in the John household if I must, I imagined Anna Taylor might feel the same way. But I couldn't fathom what Grandma Gray had said to Anna Taylor that made her stop causing trouble. I couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow. Living like this, could Anna Taylor truly be content? At this time, the flood relief efforts at the Wen River had concluded, and I received a letter from Mark Smith informing me that he would return to the capital the next day. When Mark Smith returned to the capital, I personally went to the city gate to welcome him back. From afar, I already saw his figure leading the group at the front. "Mark Smith." He ran forward and held me tightly in his arms, his firm chin resting on my shoulder, his hoarse voice whispering in my ear. "My dear wife, I'm back. I missed you. Heavens, people are watching. This is so embarrassing, let me go." My face turned bright red, while Mark Smith chuckled foolishly and held my hand. "My dear wife, I have to enter the palace shortly to meet the emperor. You should head home first and wait for me." I nodded, watching his figure as he walked away. When he returned, Mark Smith brought good news of a promotion. The new emperor, recognizing his contributions to the relief efforts, directly promoted him to Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Revenue. Before long, Mark Smith became a sought-after acquaintance among the powerful officials in the capital. When our household hosted a banquet, many prominent figures from the capital attended, including my elder sister, Anna Taylor, whom I hadn't seen in ages. While I was busy in the backyard, she rushed in holding a knife. "Impossible. Do it again, do it again. This time, I want to marry Mark Smith. Lucy Taylor, you must die." I quickly dodged, and the maid beside me immediately stepped forward to restrain her. "Inform the general's residence to come and take her back. Tell them the general's wife has fallen ill again," I said coldly, tightening my sleeves and maintaining composure as I watched Anna Taylor being dragged away with an unwilling glare. As she was being taken away, Anna Taylor continued to curse incessantly. Today, my residence was filled with many individuals from the noble and official circles of the capital. That very day, rumors began to spread, the general's wife had gone mad and nearly killed someone. When people from the general's residence came to apologize to me, I learned that Anna Taylor had not been divorced. Instead, to prevent her from causing trouble outside, they had confined her within the estate. The Thompson family, once revered by the people for their military achievements, had grown too prominent in recent days, subtly overshadowing the authority of the monarch. No matter how cautious James Thompson was, he still fell under the new emperor's suspicion. 6 months later, James Thompson was stripped of his military power. Later on, when I was pregnant, I no longer paid attention to matters concerning the general's residence, nor to Mark Smith. A secret was revealed to me: the Thompson family is truly facing a disaster this time. The emperor is suspicious by nature. The Thompson family's past achievements have become a thorn in his side. Ultimately, he could not tolerate their high status and immense power overshadowing his rule. He accused them of treason with Prince Edward and exiled them. I smiled, resting my head on his shoulder. Mark Smith, our family will fare better than this. The day I gave birth, after an exhausting night of labor, I finally delivered a baby girl. The midwife couldn't stop Mark Smith as he stumbled over to my bedside, distressed. He gripped my pale, trembling hands, drained of strength from the ordeal, and refused to let go. No more, my love. You cried out all night. I was terrified. Weakly, I lifted my head. This pain was nothing compared to the hardships I endured in my past life. It's a girl, Mark Smith. A girl is fine. No more children. One is enough. I can't bear to see you suffer like this again, it breaks my heart. I smiled, lightly scratching the palm of his hand. In this life, meeting Mark Smith is more than enough for me.